Hello, dear friends. Welcome to Kardec Radio live on Sunday evenings, every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for those of us who are on the West Coast. And we're delighted and grateful to start a new study once a week, which is Life Spirit Reports of Life After Life. And it is based on Allan Kardec's fourth book, Heaven and Hell. And we will primarily focus on the second part of Heaven and Hell. Here is the book. And the second part will give us real-life accounts of spirits who have lived their life, and these lives are briefly explained. And then they get evoked and report back to us of what their experience is like on the other side. And this is in context of the lives they have lived. These real-life accounts will help us to understand better the law of cause and effect that we all fall under, and what we may experience by having made certain choices in our lives. The second part has about 65 different cases. And, 65 different cases, and they are categorized into 5 categories. The first one are the happy spirits, then we have the average spirits, we also have suffering spirits, suicides, repentant criminals, hardened spirits, and earthly expiations. But before we go into that, we thought we're going to look at heaven and hell and how it is, what the components of heaven and hell is first. And then today we wanted to focus on chapter 1 for a moment, briefly, to look at the future life and the idea of what actually happens in the future life. Because not all of us, we know that life goes on. Know what we know as spiritists, that we actually, our soul will never die, that we are eternal beings. And not everyone is as fortunate as we are, I want to say. And then after that, we will also look at another chapter before we dive into the cases, which we thought was important for us to prepare ourselves. And that is looking at why there has been a time in history, why was mediumship actually not allowed. We know that we in Spiritism very much rely on that as our source for information from illuminated spirits, for us to learn, for our inner transformation. But that was not always so in the past. So before we start, I'm seeing wonderful friends here that I want to welcome, and I will do that in sections. There's Nora Brazil, and I'm so happy to see you. Thank you so much for joining, Nora. There is Tony Torres. Hi, thank you so much for joining as well. He's from our Bethea Spiritual Healing Center in Penryn, California. And then let's see, Vanessa. Thank you so much, Vanessa, here on Kardec Radio Live to have this blessed opportunity of sharing information from the illuminated spirit and from Allan Kardec, who was one of the very Christ-inspired beings on this planet. And thank you to Kardec Radio and Vanessa. We all have these beautiful evening classrooms, sometimes they're also during the day, where we all gather internationally to learn more lessons for us to transform, to become more perfect human beings. And we're so grateful for that. And then there's Teresa. Welcome, all of you. All right, 2 parts. The first one is the doctrine. And that is then subdivided again into several parts. The first chapter will be the future life and nothingness, which I already said we will be looking at the fear of death, heaven and hell, the concepts that church in our history is being explained of what is actually heaven and what is hell. And it's also at the same time demystified in this beautiful book. Then punishment is what we're looking at today. And then the second part has the examples, and also one chapter before the examples, which explains to us of how we actually transition from being incarnate spirits, also called souls at that point, to being discarnate spirits. Carol, thank you so much for coming. So nice to see you. Thank you so much for attending, I meant to say. It is such a pleasure to have you. I can't say it often. We also thank the good spirits for their support. And we also invite all the spirits, the discarnate spirits who are present here, who are learning in each and every one of our homes, who are listening and who have the voice, my voice on, that the information comes through. We have no idea of how many beautiful spirits we will help through these beautiful messages. Thanks to Ellen Kardec and our guide and model, Jesus. Thank you. So in the first chapter, we live, we think, we act. That is certain. And we die. That is no less certain. And we know that this so-called dying is only off. But then he asks, but where do we go when we leave this earth behind? What will it be like for us after death? Will we be better off or worse? Will we even exist or not? Aren't these questions, dear friends, familiar to you? Most of us have wondered about that. And for those of us who have recently, we have probably searched for answers, high and low, to help ourselves to understand where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. And Spiritism is a wonderful way of helping us in that. So we also all know, we're kind of establishing commonalities, we also all know that we have a desire and a need to stay alive. It's the law of self-preservation that our dear friend Carol this morning, actually it was yesterday, I listened to it this morning, discussed in her God at Home, which we all can listen to on Saturday evenings, Eastern Standard Time. So under the law of preservation, we have a desire to survive. And we also like to enjoy life, to love and be happy. And this is what Allan Kardec tells us. And we know that to be true. Essentially, there are three categories of people believing certain things, according to Allan Kardec. The first one are those who believe that once we excarnate, there is nothing. The so-called nihilists, or nihilism. The second category are those who believe that we are part of the whole, reabsorbed, in somewhat related to pantheism. And then the last category are those of us who follow and believe and who are spiritists. And we are the ones who know that we retain our individuality and that our life goes on. It is eternal. So let's look at nihilism real quick. When humans believe in nothingness, Allan Kardec says, they overwhelmingly concentrate all their thoughts on their present life. There is no real reason for them to worry about a future. It makes sense, right? Because if we don't know, if we believe there is no future after our physical form falls off, we're very preoccupied with all there is. This exclusive preoccupation, is to say, with the present leads them to think of their own selves more than anything else. It is therefore a most powerful stimulus for selfishness. Now, if we only know this is our only life, we want to make the most of it, correct? And we often want to make the most of it at the expense of other people. It's kind of like synonymous to I'm not motivated to be charitable at all, because why? This is it, right? There's also with this comes a preoccupation of wanting to look younger, maybe younger than we are once we age. a preoccupation of amassing material goods, overemphasizing our body, money, everything that we see in our culture, which we call materialism. The maxim is, according to Allan Kardec, let us enjoy ourselves while we are here. These people believe that human laws only apply to those inept enough, believe it or not, to get caught. And so they apply all their ingenuity to the best means for evading them. And that we know to be true as well, right, friends? We know that cutting corners, just trying to get away with murder, quote unquote, is often a result of that particular worldview. What also comes with it is often anger and depression. We're sure that a lot of the suicide cases are people who just don't know how beautiful and precious their gift of life is, and that there is a rightness and a perfect harmony and perfection in everything that we and they experience in their lifetimes, and that life does go on. So it is also linked then to substance abuse, because we start comparing. The neighbor has more money, a better car, and we don't understand why we wear glasses and maybe sitting in a wheelchair, and we become envious. So it's a whole very difficult package deal, so to speak. So that is nihilism. These people, needless to say, believe that once they die, that's it, done and over with. And the selfish preoccupation stems from the fact that why would it make any difference to be loving and kind and charitable, right? So the second category, let us see, is now those that believe that there is an intelligent principle. So it accepts that there is an existence of an intelligent principle, Allan Kardec says, outside of matter. It is the doctrine of the whole. What that means is upon being born, each individual assimilates a portion of the universal whole. So when we are born out of the whole, a little piece is us. This portion comprises our soul and provides us with life, intelligence, and feeling. At death, the soul returns to the common center and loses itself in the infinite like a drop of water in the ocean. So if we believe there is a whole, and we are a little droplet from the whole, and that is our incarnation, if we become part of it again, what do we lose? We lose our consciousness, we lose all of our lessons that we've learned. It is, in a way, it becomes again, and pushes us a little bit more towards materials of this, a moral consequence of this life view. We are still feeling often hopeless. It's one little step away from it, much rooted in it. Because we do not believe, if we follow that maxim, we do not believe in life after life. There is also pantheism, which is somewhat related to this point of view. It differs a little bit from pantheism, this belief in we become part of the whole again, which considers the universal principle of life and intelligence as comprising the divinity itself, which in other words means God is both spirit and matter. All beings, all the bodies of nature make up the divinity. Now we become little gods walking on earth. And from a moral point of view, the consequence of this pantheism, because how can it be that of all of us imperfect little beings, which would mean that God is also developing and perfecting him or herself, which does logically not make sense, does it? is not really helping us. The law of cause and effect does not exist. We do not end up having a desire to practice the good because there is no continuation. It's again just essentially one shot, and we do not retain any information. Lastly, friends, we have Spiritism. Here we do know we are retaining our individuality as a soul. We do know that we are here to learn new lessons. We do know we're here to perfect ourselves. We fall under the law of cause and effect. And the seeds we're planting in our garden of immortality today will be the harvest for us tomorrow. And in that sense, it takes us away. It has the potential, the promise to take us away from selfishness and pride. The importance of being charitable. Charitable, which was defined by the good spirits in the Spirits book as being benevolent, indulgent, and forgiving. So this summarizes the three main different worldviews that we find on planet Earth, of which only the one that we makes logically sense. Because how else could we explain God's justice looking around among our friends or online on TV about the disparity? Understand you correctly. The nihilistic worldview leads us around and we're seeing disparities. And out of that, we may find ourselves too ugly, too short, too stupid, not having enough money. And then our neighbors have everything. And as a result of that, we become depressed. And we don't understand how it all fits together. And out of that come other problems. And then we start medicating ourselves because the pain of existing is so great. I hope that makes sense. Now, the promise with Spiritism, if we're really practicing it and understanding it and studying it and feeling it, we get to see that really what we're experiencing in this lifetime is just the harvest of the seeds we planted in a previous lifetime. There is no one to blame. It is our own responsibility to create a better future for ourselves, and we even know how to. And that helps us, hopefully, to be not depressed, to be more accepting of life, to be actually grateful for even the hardship we experience in our incarnation. Thank you for asking, Teresa. And then there is Victoria. Not sure if it's me, but the broadcast keeps being... What's going on? Victoria, I'm not sure. Does anyone else have these problems? If you do, please let me know, because then I don't know what to do. I'm pretty close to my Wi-Fi. It shouldn't be that way, but about that. Let me see something real quick. So let me know whether that helps, please, dear friends, because we want it to be pleasant for everyone. I know how annoying it is when you can't really follow. So Betsy is saying, yes, there is a lot of interruptions in the broadcast. Okay, so I'm hoping this is, thank you so much for letting me know, because that's what I rely on. I don't know about that. I took myself off of Wi-Fi, which is probably the reason, and it should be better now. So I'm hoping as we move forward. So please keep me posted, all right? Thank you so much. So now, if you want to follow along in Heaven and Hell, Chapter 11, we want to look at why was mediumship prohibited? And the reason why we're looking at that is the following. We are getting these cases in Heaven and Hell based solely because there is mediumship, because we have the capacity and desire to communicate with spirits on the other side. Now, we would like to know whether we're doing the right thing. Are we being respectful? Are we being disrespectful? Why was mediumship disallowed in the past under Moses' days, during Moses' days? And are we different, or are we just breaking the law and we're just saying, oh, we just want to communicate with the other side. So that is why we thought it would be important to see the gift we're getting through mediumship, to see whether this is actually why this is actually a beautiful thing that we're doing, and why we're not doing anything wrong. That's really what we're leading up to. I'm seeing, could you please share the page number? Yes, it's better. Thank you. I do appreciate the lesson. Okay, so I'm really hoping, Victoria and everyone else, that the problem is solved. And I will remember that not to go on Wi-Fi. So thank you so much, dear friends. So this is page 203 in Heaven and Hell. So in Deuteronomy, which is the 5th book of the Old Testament, we find the following. It is not permitted to enter into relations with spirits, either directly or through the intermediation of those who evoke and question them. The Mosaic law punished with death the detestable practices in use among the Gentiles. Wow, friends. Here we're hearing that people were actually killed for communicating with the dead, quote unquote. Do not seek out magicians, it continues, nor seek to know anything from fortune tellers, lest you contaminate yourselves by addressing them. Contaminating yourselves by addressing them. Allow none to remain alive among you who consult diviners, or who observe dreams and omens, or who use spells, sorcery, or enchantments, or who practice fortune-telling, or who inquire of the dead to know the truth. The Lord considers all such things as abominations, and at your coming shall destroy the nations that commit such crimes. Wow, those are very strong words. Not only are we going to be killed, but we will be punished before we get killed. We will be suffering from the consequences, and we will be contaminated. Very harsh. So now we wonder, why was that such a crime? Why was during Moses' day, communicating with the deceased, with the spirits on the other side, why was that such a crime? Let us see what we're finding out. What actually motivated and justified the prohibition of communicating with spirits? Because that's what we do, right? Some of us daily, or at least weekly, at our spiritist centers, we communicate with our guides, our personal guides, our mentors, and we have sessions at spiritist centers where we communicate with those spirits every week. So Moses' prohibition was well justified. That's good to know, because evoking the dead did not originate from sentiments of respect, affection, or piety towards them. Aha. So we're learning one important aspect, that respect, affection, and piety was not part of Moses' people's attempt or desire to communicate with spirits. Instead, it was a means of fortune-telling, as we heard already, much like the omens and auguries exploited by charlatanism and superstition. Try as he might, Moses was unable, however, to uproot these customs. They had been transformed into an object of business. So what are we learning here? We're learning that we need piety, we need respect and affection for the spirits in order to invoke them, which is something that the people during Moses' days were obviously lacking. So in summary, Allan Kardec says, at Moses' time, evocations were for the purpose, again, as we said already, for fortune-telling, and at the same time, they comprised a business, associated with the practices of magic and sorcery. They were even accompanied by human sacrifice. Moses was therefore right to prohibit such things and to affirm that God loathed them. Such superstitious practices continued even through the Middle Ages. So let us back up, friends. So let us see that if we are not respectful, if we don't approach the spirits with piety, respect, and love, and if we charge for our mediumship, we are treading on thin ice. Then we seem to kind of slide a little bit back to Moses' days. As Jesus told us in the gospel, give freely what you have received freely. And since we know that mediumship, yes, we're all mediums, but some of us are more ostensible mediums than others. And we do know that mediumship is a gift from God. And we will see in a minute what we should use mediumship for. So no magic, no sorcery, and for sure no human sacrifice. So today reason predominates and Spiritism has come to show the exclusively moral, consoling, and religious purpose of relations with those beyond the grave. Consequently, Allan Kardec continues, since Spiritists do not sacrifice children or make drink offerings to honor gods, since Spiritists do not inquire of heavenly bodies, so no sacrificial killings, the dead or sorcerers, in order to divine the future that God has wisely hidden from humankind, and since Spiritists reject any form of making a business of the faculty of communicating with spirits, which some possess, and since Spiritists are not motivated by curiosity or greed, but by a sentiment of piety, and here it is, a desire to learn, improve themselves, and to comfort suffering souls, then Moses' prohibition does not relate in any way to them. Wow. So what are we learning here? What is Allan Kardec telling us? First of all, what a relief, right? So we are good. We're doing the right thing. But now let us recap why we're doing the right thing. Number one is we are approaching the spirits with respect and love. And we're approaching them with piety, with a religious mindset. We do not sacrifice human lives, but our desire is to learn from the spirits. Our desire is to improve ourselves. Our desire is to comfort suffering souls and to help them on their evolutionary path as well. So since we all know we're doing this, we're doing the good. We're actually practicing the good. It is a charitable act to be practicing mediumship if we follow these beautiful guidelines. Now, friends, you can see them on page 208, part 1, chapter 11, In Heaven and Hell, if you want to go over them yourselves. So it also says Spiritism condemns everything that motivated Moses' interdict. So we are far from it, and I hope we all fall into that category. So, in short, Spiritists evoke spirits to receive their wise counsels and to seek relief on behalf of those who suffer. And we do that often in our mediumistic sessions, our rescue work that most Spiritist centers have once a week, where we allow the disgruntled spirits a voice to express their feelings, and with the help of the loving spirit counselors, we help them to take a step in their evolution, to hopefully help them, to console them, to ease their pain a little bit. And And we also need to know that nowhere did Jesus allude to the prohibition against evoking the dead in the gospel. Nowhere. So that is an important information for us to know, that we are doing the right thing if we follow the guidelines that Alan Kardec pointed out for us. Hello, Soul. Nice to have you. So now we all know that Moses was a lawgiver, correct? And so how come his law of not allowing his people to evoke the so-called quote-unquote dead, why is that not true for us anymore? We thought Moses' law was still alive, right? The Ten Commandments and so forth. Well, we need to know that there are two parts to Moses' law, and we see that on page 209 in Heaven and Hell. There's the law of God, which he promulgated on Mount Sinai, and that law is invariable. That is the Ten Commandments. But then there's a second part to Moses' law, and that is the so-called civil or criminal law. And this prohibition of mediumship falls exactly under that. And we know, and that is changeable, and we know from our own legal system that even if we go back only 100 years, we know that the laws have changed. The laws change with our evolution, with our shifting, improving consciousness. So our human law, our civil law is not perfect. It only reflects our evolutionary step. And the same was true during Moses' days. It reflected the people of his time, the consciousness of the peoples of his time. So, in sum, there is another interesting part that I want to share with you, which struck me as interesting in any way. So, Alan Kardec on page 211 now tells us that if a church places the Mosaic law above the gospel law, and there is lots of Christian churches who do that, in other words, if a church is more Jewish than Christian, it is worth noting that of all religions, guess which religion is closest to Spiritism according to Alan Kardec? Judaism. Judaism opposes Spiritism least, because Judaism does not invoke the Mosaic law against relations with the dead, a law on which the Christian sects themselves rest. And that explains to us, dear friends, that how often do we find Christian churches, Christian sects, who do not believe in invoking the quote-unquote dead. As a matter of fact, there is a predominant fear of spirits. All we have to see is the movies. There's so many movies about ghosts. I have a client and I talk to him about the kind of work I do in my spare time. And he says, so you're talking to ghosts? And so you guys see, that is kind of like, because it's steeped in the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of spirits. Churches like us not to go there as well. But what I thought was interesting, that actually Judaism doesn't evoke Moses' law and allows us to go and allows people to go there. So, having said that, we continue on to page 213. It would be really great for you to, if you feel like it, to read that chapter. We're just picking a few highlights out. So Alan Kardec is clear. Mediumship is very nicely done. It's a perfect thing. It's supported when an evocation is made religiously and reverently. Religiously means our connection with God. It is with permission. It is by aligning our will with God's will. It is with piety and reverence. When spirits are called not out of curiosity, but out of the affection and sympathy, and with a sincere desire for instruction and moral improvement, we do not see how there can be any more lack of respect in calling individuals after death than in calling them while they are alive. So the wise Allan Kardec tells us that if we have a sincere desire for instruction to learn, or if we have a sincere desire to help, to be charitable, then there is no reason for us not to invoke spirits after death. And he also says, and that is something that we all need to remember, we are spirits too, right? We're just spirits in bodies. And the ones that we're talking to are spirits without a physical body. Yes, they have a spiritual body, but we won't go into that right now. But not a physical form like you and I do. So it's the same. Why being scared of them, right? So we know we need piety, reverence, a sincere desire to want to learn and to be helpful. Then we know that we're practicing mediumship that is supported by Jesus, and we do not fall into the traps that Moses' people did by charging money, by making it a commerce, by being irreverent. So on page 216 now, we're wrapping up, we're summarizing. Rejecting communications from beyond the grave is the same as rejecting the most powerful means of learning, Allan Kardec says, which results from knowing about the future life and the examples that such communications furnish to us. So he's saying that if we do not practice mediumship and we reject information from spirits on the other side, from discarnate spirits, we're actually denying ourselves a powerful tool of learning and learning about the future life. Remember, Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this earth, is not of this world. It is the future life, which is the kingdom in heaven. It is our future. It is where are we going after this experience called life on earth." Furthermore, he says, experience has taught us the good that we can do by turning imperfect spirits from evil and helping those who are suffering to detach themselves from matter and improve themselves. That is the rescue work we do, correct? We're helping imperfect spirits from evil, and helping them, we console them. We help them see a different perspective, a less painful perspective. And that actually includes us, because every time we do this kind of work, we're giving it to ourselves most and foremost. Right, friends? To forbid communicating with suffering souls is therefore to deprive them of the assistance that we can and must provide them. The following words of a spirit wonderfully sum up the effects of evocation when done for a charitable purpose. And here we have another guideline repeated. We need to come with an open heart, with a desire to make a difference, a desire to help those spirits and to help ourselves, because we're not only receiving information and teachings, but we're also passing information on to them, consoling information that spirits may not have. And that is why we talked about this chapter before we actually go into the cases, because now we understand a little bit better of why it is actually beneficial to study the cases, beneficial to practice mediumship, as long as we follow the maxims that Allan Kardec and Jesus, of course, because Allan Kardec is a extension of Jesus Christ in what he's teaching and bringing to this earth. So we know that we are practicing the good by communicating with spirits, by helping them, by being reverent, religious, loving, and caring. So I want to summarize the following words of a spirit that sum up the effects of evocation. And that is on page 216. And it comes from a spirit that was psychographed in Bordeaux in 1861. Every suffering and unfortunate spirit will tell you about the cause of its downfall and the follies to which it succumbed. It will tell you about its hopes, struggles, and fears, its regrets, pain, and desperation. You will be moved with compassion for the spirit. And if you follow its complaints, you will see that God has not lost sight of it, that He is always awaiting the repentant sinner and will open His arms as soon as it begins to progress towards Him. You will see the wrongdoer's progress, to which you will have the happiness and glory of contributing. You will follow it with the solicitude of the surgeon, seeing the healing of the wound that he cares for daily. Isn't it beautiful? It shows us how worth it is to study and to practice Spiritism, to develop our mediumship, to do the good. Because these cases, and that is, dear friends, is why we're studying them in the coming weeks, will teach us so much of how we suffer when we do make certain choices, how we will feel, why we will feel good and rest in peace after having made certain choices in our lifetime. It will allow us, as he says, to potentially cry and be really upset about those experiences certain spirits have on the other side. But it will also tell us of how we can avoid those pitfalls, because now we know. It is like a reality show. It's like real life TV for those of you who have a TV, because it will really take us into those lives of those beings. And we also help those spirits, because when we start communicating with them, ourselves during rescue work, we will be one of those agents to help console those spirits who have maybe made not such wise choices during their lifetime, and we are learning from them as well. So in closing, let us say a little prayer of gratitude. And before we say the prayer, we just want to say we're so grateful for all of you being here and supporting these beautiful studies and having the desire alongside of us to learn for our own good and for the good of everyone who touches us. And next week, we will be going into the second part of Heaven and Hell, and we will be studying the passage, the chapter that's called the passage. So we will prepare ourselves a little bit from a theoretical perspective of what actually happens when we transition before we go into the cases. So my dear friends, if you're not driving and you're at home or in a comfortable place, I invite you to close your eyes and let us connect with God with so much gratitude for God, for our beloved Jesus, our guide and model, for Allan Kardec of doing this incredible Christ-inspired charitable work during his lifetime, of giving us all this information from which we can learn so much. We're also grateful for all the good spirits and healing doctors that are present during our gathering, our international classroom on Sunday night, for supporting us and for learning alongside of us. And we thank you for your patience with modern technology. But we want to focus on the unification we experience by meeting and gathering, our hearts and minds connecting for learning the good, turning ourselves towards the good, of practicing, of feeling, of speaking, envisioning and molding the good every single moment during our lives. And we look forward to next week to learn more about the transition, our transition that we will experience sooner or later, and how to make wise choices in our lives, in our current lives, so that we plant beautiful, wonderful, nourishing seeds today that will determine our happy, blessed harvest tomorrow. And with this, we kindly and humbly ask for permission to close tonight's study session. And so be it. Thank you, dear friends. Thank you again, Tony. And thank you so much for being here. And Betsy, thank you so much, Soul. And yes, you guys are all beautiful and wonderful. And I'm so excited you are here. And I'm excited to be here too. And one day, hopefully, we will all meet, right? Good night, dear friends. Blessings. God bless you.